On this episode, we talk to a recovering perfectionist who is an expert in procrasto learning. My guest is Erica, and she's one of the four co-founders of Kula, a community that's dedicated to helping neurodivergent people find each other and support. Erica is a former business coach turned personal coach, and this came from the discovery she made about herself and the others that she had been helping. She realized it's better to help the person than to coach the business. We also talk about how we're not willing to put in the work it is to eat crabs, but it's kind of like therapy. Let's jump in.
I'm a transplant in Massachusetts, so I'm one of the few people that resides in this state that does not touch seafood.
So you don't do crabs or anything, huh?
I mean, I used to live in Maryland and I ate crab. I can tolerate like crab and lobster, but honestly, they're both just way too much work.
Yeah.
And I'm not like obsessed with them the way that some people are. And like if it's something that you really love, then I get you're willing to put in the work, but like I don't feel that way about it, so I'm just like, eh.
Well, I think that probably living in Maryland, you've had more than enough of crab and seafood, probably, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
also,
we used to take everyone who visited our office when I worked there out for crabs because they were always coming from somewhere else, so it was like the thing.
right.
But I would usually get like crab alfredo while everyone else is like picking the crabs off like apart off the table. But
I had a friend I have a friend that he's from Maryland, and
yeah.
the first time he took to Maryland, we went to, I don't know, some like seafood. It's not in a restaurant. It's like you just buy seafood by the like bulk or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And so, he's like, you got to get crabs like this way. And then we took him home to his house and we do all this work. And I'm like, that's it. Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
that's all we get is just that. Okay. All right.
Exactly. It was like hours. We'd be sitting at the table with like out of towners and all the like people who were from Maryland were trying to like teach them how to pick crabs, but that's pretty much everyone's reaction. It's like you get so little out of it for so much work. And
Yeah.
that's really the punchline for me. I'm like, I don't really want to have to work that hard. I just would
Yeah.
like it.
I've
Just
never
bring it to
thought of
me
this
already
before.
done.
I've never thought of this before, but like eating crab is kind of like therapy. It's like you got to put in a lot of work to get these little nuggets of results. But a lot of times those little nuggets of results, they're pretty good. They taste pretty good, and but it's just a lot of work to get the little nuggets. You know what I mean?
That's a good analogy. Yep. Yep. And most of the time it feels like you're getting nowhere. But eventually it all adds up, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Have you ever been to Texas?
I have been to Texas a few times.
And
Um,
did you eat barbecue? Because apparently, like if you go to Maryland, you have to eat crab. If you come to Texas, you have to eat a barbecue.
I think one of the trips I was there for work and our like the office we were visiting, our host took us out to like a very big steakhouse. I
Hmm.
don't remember actually doing barbecue though. I know we did steak. I don't It was a long time ago.
It's a cow. It's close enough.
Right.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Yeah.
Just not really cooked the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Erica, before we get started, tell people where they can find you and tell people what you do.
Yeah. Well, I am one of the co-founders of Kula. It's an online community platform where we just are creating a safe space for people to connect, explore, and grow together. Really, this is a place where we want to dive into the depths and just sometimes have hard conversations, sometimes have vulnerable conversations, talk about all of the messy chaos that is just being a human, and just have a space where we can kind of navigate through it all together. So that can be found at findyourkula.com and on Instagram at findyourkula.
Cool. So, when you say like safe space, people can go in tough conversations, is that you yourself, or is that a group of people that help facilitate that? Like, how does that? If I sign up, like, what exactly happens for me?
Oh gosh, yeah. We have four co-founders on our team, all working together to kind of build this platform and bring each of us kind of bringing our unique gifts or niche. Three out of the four of us are coaches. So we do facilitate a number of weekly workshops. We have a couple different peer support groups that you can join. And we also just have a lot of opportunities and resources that we're trying to provide, whether it be like sharing articles or sharing videos. And we are also going to get into creating more online courses and content that can be consumed on demand. We're just getting off the ground right now, so it's really exciting that so far we've just had a lot of really great engagement in the community from people who are just looking, but just growth minded individuals who are like ready to ask hard questions and just be curious and explore and grow together. So there's a lot of just conversation among members too in the community. It's not 100% us. We just are looking for anyone to come in who is engaging in, their own personal growth journey.
Did that come about from like, so y'all? I'm assuming you have founded this with a couple of other people, right?
Yeah.
And so did that come about because y'all, I don't want to say y'all were looking for a safe space, but maybe y'all were already kind of doing that and you're like, okay, well, maybe other people would want to do this kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting because we didn't necessarily set out with this intention, but we realized once we all kind of got together, which was we all went, the three who are coaches went through the same coaching certification last year and just met via those groups, the mentoring calls, the cohort calls, everything that we were going through in the certification together. Um, and we didn't intend necessarily for this when we first set out on this journey, but realized that all four of us are some flavor of neurodivergent. And also, two out of the four co founders identify as queer. So, in many ways, a lot of us had been sort of like navigating rejection or, just being kind of like an outsider at one point or another in our lives, and had really struggled with spending the majority of our lives like masking, and getting to this point where we just realized how exhausting it was to be inauthentic or to be something that we weren't. And when we started exploring, it's it's interesting to like have that moment where you realize you've found your people, and then that journey of rediscovering who you are and living in your full authenticity becomes so much less arduous when you have people to walk with you. It's like it's like empowering and just supportive, and really helps to kind of facilitate that growth when you know you're not walking that path alone. And so yeah, we hadn't really experienced anything like that before in our own lives. So we decided to create a space where people could just connect and grow together, and walk through some of those more challenging moments.
That's awesome. For people that don't know, can you kind of explain neurodivergency and what that is?
Yeah, of course. So I'll try to do it in just like the most succinct way possible. But sometimes my ADHD just sends me on like wild tangents.
Okay, it's
so,
okay.
um, so neurodivergence essentially like when the human mind is being studied. Initially there was this like definition of the way that the human mind or the human brain is supposed to function, which is also known as neuronormative or neurotypical. Anything that is different from neurotypical, which could be many different flavors, is considered neurodivergent. So it could be ADHD, autism, OCD, um, even things like dyslexia or dysgraphia, like things that are um, quote unquote outside of the norm of what that definition is. is what falls under the umbrella of neurodivergence.
And so I'm assuming the the way you identify that is with ADHD. Is that right?
Yeah, ADHD, and I'm also exploring with my therapist right now um, OCD. There's several subtypes of OCD. My particular subtype that I believe is where I fit, and again, I've not been officially diagnosed with OCD, but I'm going through the process of kind of like unpacking it and exploring it and trying to uncouple like what is just like the perfectionism that can be associated with ADHD versus what is actually OCD. Um, so my subtype that I'm exploring is called just right OCD. Again, not officially diagnosed yet, but something that I'm trying to just navigate because there's so many, I've just had so many moments where like I feel isolated and alone, kind of like trying to explain how I feel or how I think or like where a reaction is coming from, and trying to like untangle like what is just my wiring versus what is a learned behavior that I can actually change or do something about. So like that's what I'm trying to navigate in therapy, which is just a whole roller coaster. all,
Sure.
all day every day, you know?
Um, when did you start with your therapist?
With this particular therapist, gosh, I think I've been with her for about 6 months.
Had you done
Um,
therapy prior to that?
I had not in a while. I had more recently just been engaging more with things like coaching, and this whole shelf of books behind me, which is 98% like personal and professional development. So it's not a lot of fiction going on back there, but um yeah, I it actually was born of like just I'm in a new ish partnership. I've been with my current partner for about 2 years. Um and he has ADHD, and ADHD is kind of more prevalent in this family. And I think I had always sort of known that I displayed some of the characteristics, but never felt like it was prominent enough in my life to warrant a diagnosis, and it had never even been explored by my parents. But the more I started to try to learn about my family and these people that I'm like living with and interacting with on a daily basis, the more I was like, this really sounds familiar. Like, and I just started checking more and more of the boxes, and then reading about how so many women are misdiagnosed or completely missed in a diagnosis. Like a lot of women are diagnosed with anxiety and depression instead of ADHD. Like there's a lot of dynamics like that because of the way the diagnostics were originally written. And so that's when I was like, okay, I need to find a specialist who can kind of walk me through this, take me through the diagnostic, and just give me um like the information that I need to be able to navigate it. Because for me, that's all the diagnosis has meant. It's just like language that helps me articulate like what's happening or how I'm thinking or how I'm feeling. And then that is information that helps me move forward. Because that might
Because
mean like I might need to do something different or make an accommodation, but it's not, like it doesn't really change anything except that like I think it allows me to accept things a little bit more and then figure out a creative and curious path forward.
well, it didn't become something that is the reason why you can't do things, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't go, well, I have OCD, so I can't do that. Like, you
Right.
know what I mean? Because you've been doing all these things, it's just been difficult, and you can't explain to others why it's difficult for you to do these things. But like you said, now you have a description, you have the words to go, this is why things are difficult. Doesn't change the fact that I need to accomplish things.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is why it's more difficult for me, just so you know.
Right.
Um, my
Exactly.
girl, my girlfriend has HSP, right? She's a highly sensitive person, and so
Mhm.
I've had to really try to really learn and understand what that's like because I have no concept of how that feels to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
But
exactly.
like, as my partner and as a mom, she still has a job to do. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so she has to find ways to to work on herself, to take care of that so that she can be good. You know what I mean? And that's what she does, which I thank her very much. It's very appreciative.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's not an excuse or get out of jail free card. For me, it's just like, okay, well, if I am trying to accomplish like this thing, and maybe it's like the model or the checklist or the like system has been created by someone who's neurotypical, I can look at that and say like, it's cool that that works for you. It's really not working for me. So I need to find a different way that jives a little bit better with the way that I'm wired. So yeah, it's just given me like, it's opened up this whole realm of information that gives me permission to like be a little bit more curious and creative about how I approach things, to be able to better manage like my own like internal state. Like for me, I'm also like super sensory sensitive, which is a big component of my ADHD. So like learning how to manage my energetic output, or like the sensory information that my body and brain has to process, because it's always on overdrive. Like just being able to like kind of have access to new information and new tools has completely changed the way that I like design my days or approach work, or all those kinds of things.
So I would assume inside the Kula group, right? It would be it'd be a space where, it could start be very victimizing, right? Like, I have this, I can't do this. But I'm assuming, because this is your mindset, is probably the mindset of your partners, there's a lot of talk around like appreciating someone's issues or problems or things they're dealing with, and then going, but you can do this. And
Yeah,
that's where the real support comes in the community of like the acknowledgement of like, hey, we all have struggles, and then the support of like, hey, but still you can do this. I can do it. You can do it. Like, we can all do it, right?
exactly. That's just it. Again, like I think so for one of our other co-founders, he was late diagnosed with autism. And that's what he said. Like one of the first things after his diagnosis that he did was seek out an autistic peer support group. And he's like, I know for a fact that I wouldn't be where I am without the support of other people who were kind of walking that same path. Because it's the classic like, two heads are better than one. It's like when you've got more people to kind of like walk beside, you can share. And like one person says like, hey, I found this article and something in it really hit home for me, like maybe this will resonate for you. Or like, sometimes I make this accommodation or I ask for this and it's really helpful to me. It's that sort of like acknowledgement, exactly like you said. It's the acknowledgement of the challenge. Like, we do have a unique set of challenges, but none of them are challenges that can't be overcome if we navigate through it together. And there's something just so empowering and validating about having a community of people that can provide support on the hard days and like lift you up, and that can celebrate your wins and your progress as you grow and learn and continue to evolve, and people who are just like cheering you on the whole way. Like, it's it's really been a game changer, I think, for even just like our small little community that we have right now. And I'm really excited for how the impact that it's going to have on for other people like navigating similar paths.
Well, just on a very basic, like primal level, right? Um, Community and people have always been the start, right? Even so much so that, like, I think in the olden days, or a long time ago, if you weren't willing to be part of the community, they just kicked you out. Like, they were like,
Oh
hey, if you're
yeah.
not willing to be in the community or do your work, like, we're just going to kick you out. Like, and we don't
Yep.
have to put up with this. And I think that, now that we're here in, 2024, 2025, and the world is, technology, there's ways. Maybe it doesn't feel exactly the same because you're not face to face with the human, but like, you can make some pretty strong connections, like you've already said. So let me ask you this. So we're both Jay Shetty School graduates, right? And I'm assuming all the people in your group, they are too, since y'all kind of met, right? And like was finding the people at the school and making those connections one of the most awesome side products to like what we were doing for you?
Absolutely. I i've been a business coach for most of my career, and I entered into the school because, like, just as a tiny little side quest, I entered into the school because most of the business owners and leaders I've worked with, their biggest challenge is often got nothing to do with a business strategy or a marketing strategy or sales skills. I mean, of course, like sometimes there's knowledge or skill gaps in those areas and we can help with that. But more often than not, I find that people struggle to like manage their stress or prioritize or stay motivated or um
Not be
just
depressed.
even identify, yeah, like even identify what their goals are or like get over that feeling of overwhelm. When you're a business owner and everything, you have to do everything, it's so easy for you to just shut down because you're overwhelmed. So I entered into the school because I was like, I really need to do a better job honing my life skills so that I can better serve my like the business owners that I'm coaching. And I knew that I would get some really great skills and tools out of it. I had no idea and never could have anticipated the impact that the community around the school would have on me. And that really was it. Like that was the catalyst, because I think as we were like nearing graduation, we were like, well, what happens now? and
Sure, yeah.
we were like, we need to keep this going. But in a slightly different way. Like we didn't necessarily want to just be with coaches. We wanted to expand and like, because I think the more we expose ourselves to people who think differently than us or have different experiences from us, the more we can like learn and grow as humans. And building these little bridges, like little tiny bridges of understanding between people when we show up with like curiosity and compassion in these hard conversations or in the depths or in the messiness of our humanity, we, I don't know, I feel like our own inner world gets a little bit brighter, but gradually that's going to have a ripple effect out into the world. So we just really wanted to create these opportunities for connection where people could kind of learn and grow together, because we had felt the impact of what that can do, and we really just wanted to like keep that going.
Yeah, I think you know, for me to get to where I am right now has been a whole like evolution, And we'll just say up to this point, like, I mean, I have a lot of friends, but I didn't like have a lot of close friends. So I didn't have a lot of close friends because of me. Like, you know what I mean? Because of like, walls and boundaries, not boundaries, walls and things I'd set up and how I'd push people away and treat them and blah, blah, whatever. And so like, I'm really trying to have this new look on life and be, more appreciative and have more friends. Right. So with that view, and you walk into school and everybody's studying the same, I made so many friends, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I had to get over, even in that process, I had to get over a lot of myself of like, the way I would do the school and the way they would do the school, or their opinions or my opinions or whatever else is, and go, oh, like all that stuff really doesn't matter. Like we're all here for the same reason. Like you have a really great opportunity to make a really good connection. Keep making them, keep doing it, keep reaching out. Sometimes I would reach out and like people would not be interested in talking to
Yep.
me, which was like totally fine. But I mean, it would the more chances I took to make friends and the more I reached out, just the greater my experience became. And then that just re-amplified that I need to be doing that in the real world.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, just saying hi. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times a day I try to like say hi and give someone a compliment and they're just like, you know what I mean? I'm just
Mhm.
like, okay, well, but like, I'm not going to stop. And like, and then
Absolutely.
and then people feel good, and like you said, it creates little mini bridges of like, that guy was nice to me, you know what I mean? And that
Mhm.
kind of helps. And so yeah, I just that was, I just wanted to ask, because for me that was a huge thing to have this community and meet these people and everybody be so nice and stuff like that, yeah, that was huge.
I
I want
feel
to
like
go
we've
back.
just,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was gonna say I wanted to go back too to where you were talking about like how it started out that people were in community and like we literally needed each other for survival.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way we sort of lost that and everyone started to like isolate or just like get overly independent. And I don't know, it's almost like people are trying to wear badges of honor for like being able to like just do everything on their own, but it puts so much unnecessary pressure on us. And then I think we end up like I don't know. I think we end up masking. I mean, even if masking is typically a term used when neurodivergents are talking about the way they tried to like hide or suppress their symptoms. But I think to some extent, all of us wear masks at some point or another, trying to like hide the things that we're insecure about because we fear rejection. And um I don't know, it's just like this never-ending cycle of like putting way too much pressure on ourselves, trying to like carry the weight of everything when we're just I don't think we're meant to do any of this alone. It's life can be so much more fulfilling and um I don't know, just harmonious when we do it in community, when we find our people.
Well, I think the first thing is no one does anything alone. No,
Mhm.
no one's doing everything completely themselves. The most successful musician, the most successful artist, the most successful athlete, no, the president, whatever. Nobody's got there by themselves, right? That's like the
Exactly.
first thing. But I think the second thing is the acknowledgement that no one does it themselves and going, I can't do it myself. You can't do it myself. How can I help you? How can you help me? And making that a real conversation kind of
Yeah.
kicks open the door of this idea of like, like you can tell me you don't need help, but I mean, everybody does in some
Exactly.
in some form or fashion, in some
Yeah.
way, everybody needs help.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were talking about earlier perfectionism,
Mm.
like OCD and perfectionism, right?
Mhm.
Do you um so where okay, so I'm assuming you're a slight perfectionist.
I like to say I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Okay.
I'm trying to shed some of those
Okay.
old patterns and tendencies.
So are all the books behind you like in alphabetical order or anything special about those books?
Oh, they're in color order,
Oh
like
yes, see, color order. There you go. Yeah, I noticed that they were all white on the top, and I was like, well, maybe that's it. My closet is color coordinated. Like it
mine is
goes through.
too.
Yeah, but okay. So let's talk about when perfectionism is good and when perfectionism is bad.
Yeah.
So when is
Um,
when is perfectionism good?
well, I think that is one thing that I've been sort of wrestling with or trying to acknowledge because as much as there are so many challenges that come along with neurodivergence and whether I'm attributing like I think because rejection sensitivity is so strong for ADHD, that's where I developed a lot of perfectionist tendencies to try to like shield myself from rejection, right? It's
Minimize
just that
minimize it, right?
yeah, exactly. You just like kind of it's this idea that like if I can look like I've got everything together or I'm good at things, people will like me. It's just sort of this learned behavior of like my worth or my worthiness comes from what I can do or what I produce or, something external. Um and it definitely has served me in so many ways, right? Like I left home for college and barely ever called home because I was completely self sufficient. I knew how to manage my schedule. I could hold a job while I was going to school. Like, I could be hyper organized and manage my time and manage my space and manage myself um, to such an extent that, like, my mom would literally just call and be like, Hi, just checking for signs of life. Like, are you. Are you like because I had developed all of these like little systems and like things that just helped me thrive in that environment. Like it was I found that transition actually from high school to college relatively easy because I had all of these little I don't know, systems of checks and balances or habits that I had developed and it allowed me to sort of like hold those habits even through a really big life transition. Um, but then if I'm looking at it in retrospect, like in the workforce, of course there were moments where I was like, given credit for whatever work I produced for it being, exceptionally thorough or like really well done or something like that. And that always feels good. But then what that ended up doing to me internally is like, well, now I have to like raise the bar next time and next time and next time. So and it wasn't even necessarily pressure from anyone else but me. It was me saying, like, well, that was perfect, but like now they're going to start asking more of me, and that's going to have to be perfect, and that's going to have to be perfect. And so I think sometimes it caused like paralysis almost of like I would I would hesitate to even start a task because I felt like if I can't do it perfectly, then why try? Um and so it's interesting. I was just on a webinar with another just absolutely brilliant coach like a week or two ago, and she used the term procrasto learning. And I was like, oh, if that doesn't just like kill my, like, that just goes right to the heart of my perfectionism. Because I mean, this whole shelf of books, this is procrasta learning. It's like, well, I can't do the thing until I know everything about the thing and I can do it perfectly. And so like it would mean that a lot of stuff would take me longer, and like, sometimes I could miss deadlines because I'm too busy learning more things, or just putting this pressure on myself instead of just saying like I'm just going to ship it, get feedback, and then continue to make it better over time. Like I just always put this pressure on myself that it had to be perfect the first time. And so there were ways that it served me and definitely ways that it didn't. And it was mostly rooted in just my own internal dialogue.
Well, I think you made the best point. You go, it works really well for organization and like, keeping your life together and transition, but it doesn't work very well when it becomes like paralyzing, where it's like I can't do anything unless it's like absolutely perfect. And then
Mm-hmm.
just the unrealistic notion of that idea.
Right.
I mean, just that really nothing we ever do is truly perfect. It might feel perfect, and but like, then you get to like OCD, and part of the reason why people kind of repeat patterns in OCD is because it needs to feel perfect, right? It needs to
Yeah,
feel
it
a
needs to
certain
feel
way.
finished. Yep.
Finished. Yeah, you
Yep.
know what I mean? And so like it's all about feelings and recognizing your feelings and acknowledging your feelings. So what have you been doing to work on this perfectionism to make it work for you more in a positive way than a negative way?
Yeah. I think um like I said, in like work environments, and I mean honestly I've been out of the corporate world for like 2 years, but I think a lot of these lessons sort of like transfer carry over into life. Um I sort of went in with this very like limited idea that if something was my job, I had to do it and I couldn't rely on anyone else. Um and so the further I got into my career and the more I started to um just like ask questions and take a more collaborative approach to things, I realized like number 1, I don't have to carry the full weight of anything, even if I'm the person responsible for the ultimate like output or outcome. Um I can still collaborate with other people and learn from them, because it took some of the pressure off me feeling like I had to know everything or learn everything, um, and that I could actually just reach out and use my resources and work a little bit smarter instead of working so hard towards this completely unrealistic standard. Again, that I had 100% put on myself. I've never been in a position, luckily, where I've had a boss who has had that type of like unrealistic expectation of me. I've always had the unrealistic expectations of myself. So I've been trying to use that more in all areas of life because I saw how well it served me. Like the further I got in my career, I did better work when I did collaborative work. And I think that's true in like so many scenarios. Again, and it's the whole idea and premise of the community. It's like our collective minds, like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? Like the
Right.
famous Aristotle quote, like our collective minds are better than anything any of us could come up with individually.
Well, I think,
So collaboration and community.
I mean, back to what we were originally talking about. No one does it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The any job that you do kind of yourself is very lonely and isolated, kind of, you know what I mean? And the collaborative approach, the community approach, not only does it make your job easier, but I feel like that you personally get more out of it. Like you get, and the people you're
Oh
working
yeah.
with get more out of it. You know what I mean? In the sense of like ideas or even stress relief or whatever else it is, right? Like, you know, it again, back to the way we are primarily wired is to be community. You know what I mean? So when we do things together, it just feels better. You know, it feels better than doing it by yourself.
I've also tried like I think my this is one of the things that I'm working on, like kind of unpacking with my therapist is like my like rigidity around like my own little like rituals or rules. Um because there's certain things like that can totally derail my day. Like if I time block my day and I say like I'm going to spend this much time on this project or this much time on this task and then I've got this meeting and this thing, if it goes off the rails early in the day, like in my mind because that day didn't work out perfectly to plan, the day is over and I might as well just pack it up and come back tomorrow and try again. Right? So like I've tried really hard to establish like just moments for myself to kind of pause and say like it's okay for you to move that time block. No one knows it's there but you. Like
Right.
it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. And like just sort of give myself a little bit of grace. And the phrase that I heard, and I wish that I could remember where I heard it. So I unfortunately can't give credit, but maybe we can Google it or something later. Um, be firm with your intention, but flexible in form. And I just love the idea of like giving yourself the grace to kind of like pivot or try something different or come up with a creative solution if um if your original plan doesn't work out, um because as long as you get to the same end result, like that's really all that matters. And sometimes my plan, while it might look great on paper, might not be the best way to achieve it. It might not be the most effective or the most efficient or even just, it might be so limiting because I've closed myself off to any new possibility by trying to be so like strict or rigid to this plan. And so I've really tried to just remind myself that like flexibility is actually probably going to get me a lot farther than agonizing over this plan or being super rigid about the plan. Um, and honestly, people are probably going to like me a little bit more along the way if I'm not so, so damn rigid. Like,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay.
mhm.
So, so you've, how many business have you just tried to start one businesses or a bunch of businesses? How many businesses have you tried to start?
Well, when I was laid off at the end of 2021. Um, that was a rough and rocky time in the corporate world in general. Lots and
Sure.
lots of that stuff happening. So I decided immediately to file an LLC and just try to take all of my experience and do my own thing. Because I had been coaching business owners for so long. I was like, it'll be super easy for me to build a business. um, and I knew from a strategic standpoint and from a like operational or like process standpoint, exactly what I needed to do. What I dramatically underestimated was the imposter syndrome and the perfectionism and all of these things that were going to creep up and just absolutely cripple me. And so I would say that I had like a bunch of false starts when I was first starting my own coaching business. So I had my coaching business, and now we've launched this community. So I guess technically 2 businesses are what I've launched. But yeah,
But you're saying,
that's it.
well, no, but I mean, but you're saying that you had a lot of intentions around doing things like this, but the perfectionism and that kind of, it just kept pulling you, the imposter syndrome pulling you back, huh?
Yeah.
I think, I
Yeah.
think, I think
And
I think a lot of people suffer from that though. I think that's like more normal than people want to give it credit for, you know?
absolutely. But that's the thing. I think in the world of entrepreneurship, and like the one thing that I just like emphatically unsubscribe to is this like idea or this narrative that I think a lot of people are given in the world of entrepreneurship of like, just, you know, like don't tell anyone what you're doing. Shut yourself out for 6 months or 12 months and like put your nose down and just hustle and grind until you build the thing and like get it off the ground. It's just, you get all this like messaging of like, if you want to do this, then you have to do this and you have to do it alone because this is your business. And like, and it's isolating. The world of entrepreneurship can be so isolating if you buy into that narrative, because you're also getting these like sort of subtext messages of competition. Like, no one's going to help you because there's other people out here trying to do their own thing. So you just got to figure it out. And when you feel super isolated, like for especially for me and my little ADHD brain, I didn't have the language for this when I was going through it at first, but like I I didn't realize that, like, I have a hard time asking for help because I don't want people to say no. Like, I don't want that feeling of rejection. So, like, the rejection sensitivity came on super strong. And then there was a whole lot of like the who's going to care what you have to say? Like, who you think people are actually going to pay you for this? Like, all of these things. You're just like, I was just sort of like, from all directions, my very busy mind was hitting me with all these reasons why it wasn't going to work or I wasn't going to be capable of doing it. And when you're sort of buying into that narrative that like you just have to figure it out, you just have to push through or power through, like, that doesn't really work. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
But what I also didn't have was the official, like, again, this is where like the ADHD diagnosis would have been so helpful at this point in my life, because I would have approached it so much differently. Like the way that I designed my days and allocated my time and approached problems or like new things or hard things, I would have done it totally differently, knowing what I know now. But I allowed myself to become like paralyzed, and I just went through these like, where it would be like probably like a month or 2 months where I just wouldn't do anything, and I would just focus on like whatever part-time job I was doing, or like maybe I should just go back to applying for jobs and trying to work for someone else because I'm never going to be able to do this. Um and then I would like dive back in and ultimately like stall out again. So it just was this like sort of cycle for probably like 6 months to a year of my coaching business where I was like completely flailing. and then had to like, honestly, it was getting into the school and having community and hearing that my experience was normal, was like how everyone was feeling pretty much. But I was like, okay, well, now we can just do this together. Now it's like we can talk about it and we can talk about how hard it is, but we can also help each other and cheer each other on and support each other through it. And that's really what pulled me through, which is where I was like, I'm going to continue coaching, one-on-one coaching on my own, but I also want to create a space where other people can come, like entrepreneurs or neurodivergent people or whoever needs support, they can come and have that feeling that I felt when I finally started to like move through some of those blocks.
Um, am I hearing you correctly? I mean, going to the Jay Shetty school, it helped a lot with this kind of stuff, right? Like, that's you're telling me that, is that
Yeah.
correct? And I was thinking about
Yeah.
like, you know, when you go to something like a school like that, everybody's there for the same reason, right? But when you get on your Facebook page, not everybody's there for the same reason that you are on your Facebook page. And so when those kind of conversations happen on a Facebook page or another social media platform that's not set up for that kind of talk, like you know why you're going to be there for that kind of talk, it could go off in all these different directions and be weird and then criticism and then stuff like that. And so, again, it's really important that when you want to explore yourself or you want to be better, that you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And like, I think that's probably the big underestimation that I took from the school, is that like I didn't realize like how important this large group of like-minded people was going to be to me. You know what I mean? Because I had
Yeah.
never put myself out there to do that. You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
I was always a person that would sit in the back of the room, don't pick me, not raise my hand. That was, that was me. You know what I mean? And so to be the
Yep.
person that's in the front row raising their hand and goes, "Who wants to be friends?" is like totally different. But I mean, to at least in my experience, it was a way amazing. It was a way amazing experience.
Yeah. 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 Same. I'm super introverted, and a lot of the people who like probably know and love me best wouldn't say that, but I am, because I'm extroverted around the right people, but I'm introverted and maybe even sometimes a little bit shy around people that I don't know. So I'm the same as you. Like, I'm not raising my hand. I'm not speaking up. I'm not putting myself out there. Again, rejection sensitivity. Like, what if they don't like me? Or what if they criticize me? Or what if they just happen to like, you know, hit right on my biggest fears or insecurities when I finally put myself out there? That's too vulnerable, too scary, not doing it. So yeah, I feel the same way. But then it was like the more I saw people stepping out and being vulnerable in the school, and then just being met with nothing but support and love and like, whatever, like just let's just lift each other up. I was like, oh, I can be a little bit more extroverted here because it's safe for me to be more extroverted here. I
Well,
know that I'm not going to be met with that judgment.
I would argue you it's not that you could be more extroverted, you could be more authentic to who you were as
Right.
a person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like
Right.
I was thinking, like I can be kind of fairly introverted, and a lot of my friends would
Yeah.
say that I'm not. But there, when you talk about a mask and going out in public and, our imposter syndrome and how I represent myself online and to my clients and to my friends and stuff like that, you know, it's a lot of like figuring out, how to be as much as your authentic self and as little of that, that extrovert mask that an introvert might put on. You know what I mean? Like the,
Oh, yeah.
and I found that like this is what I found, which is ridiculous. The more that I am my absolute self, the more people just gravitate toward me. And I don't mean that in a conceited way. I mean that in a way of like, if I had known that being myself would be like not only like this easy and this accepted, like I would have done it a long time ago. But like I was too
Right.
scared that it wouldn't be accepted, or like you said, at the times it was, then I was rejected and things like that. And again, I think this is a very, very normal problem that a lot of people feel because we're
Yep.
all just trying to fit in. But the weird part about it is you're
Uh-huh.
already in. You're already in. Like you're
Yeah.
alive, you're in the human race. There's no getting into anything. You're
Yeah.
already here.
Yeah. I love the way that Brene Brown like differentiates the concept of fitting in versus the concept of belonging. Um she says, and I'm just going to like paraphrase because I'm not going to get it 100% exact, but she says something like, fitting in requires you to like assess the situation and change who you are to be accepted. Belonging just requires you to show up and be who you are. And like, you're exactly right. I found the same thing in my experience. Like, the more I try to fit in, the more I feel rejected. But the more I just show up in authenticity, the more I feel accepted and like I belong somewhere. It's like, it's almost like that energy or that vibration that you're putting out just like attracts those people into your sphere. And then you just, again, like once you find your people and you feel that sense of belonging, then you just feel safe to be fully authentic. um but I think it requires in the beginning a little bit of courage, because you have to like be willing to like put a little bit of it out there, or like test the waters a little bit and say like, here here it is, like, how we doing,
Right.
is it cool? And then once you're sort of like met with, yeah, that's cool, you're like, all right, well, here's a little more. We still cool because I can get pretty weird. Like, I don't.
Well, I think trying to fit in is a lot of guessing. It's a lot of guessing
Ugh,
of what are these people going to
it's
think and what are they.
exhausting.
Well, but I mean, would you rather guess or would you rather just know?
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah.
yourself,
Oh.
you know, you know,
Yeah.
and if you really get to know yourself, you know how to just be inside of groups of people without having to act or do any, you don't have to do any, guess how I'm supposed to be. You're just there. You know what I mean? It's just it. Like you're just there,
Mhm.
I think
Yep.
probably, if you ask my friends, they wouldn't notice much difference about me. A lot of the differences has happened inside of me, but the biggest difference for me now versus before was my ability just to be somewhere and just be there and not have to be doing or acting or have some sort of mission I'm on. I can just be there and go, these are my friends, and accept it, and be social and just be there and just like hang out and just take everything in and just enjoy, like, these are my friends and this is the space and all that kind of stuff. I think we don't do enough of
Mm.
just kind of just like, oh, this is cool. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just being fully present and like allowing whatever is like to just be, just
Yeah,
be.
just be. Yeah. This final segment is brought to you by HeyJustBe.com. I believe that achieving balance in the mental, physical, and metaphysical aspects of your purpose through learning, serving, and creating can transform your life into one you truly enjoy living. Want to learn more? Visit www.heyjustbe.com. So
Yeah.
how I usually wrap this thing up, this is perfect. It's a perfect intro for it. How I usually wrap this thing up is I ask people, what do you do to just be your best self so you can be good for everybody else? And so I'm assuming you have a pretty extensive list because you have been working like really hard on yourself. So tell me, as you like, what do you do to make your, on a daily basis, what do you do to make yourself good so you can be good for your clients and your boyfriend and your family and everybody around you?
Yeah. Um a couple years ago, I decided to start scrapping the idea of New Year's resolutions.
Mhm.
And instead, I started a list. And it's my list of things that make me come alive. So it's like all these little things that sort of like recharge me or refuel me, um, including a number of different things like reading, journaling, going for a walk, meditating, going for a bike ride, like just being out in nature. um I have just this sort of running list of like practices that I incorporate, but again, going back to like, there was a time in my life where I tried to be so um like I really tried to like establish like the perfect routine, and then like if I can't do the routine, like if I can't meditate for 20 minutes a day followed by journaling followed by this, then I might as well just not even do any of it. So that was one of the steps that I took in my like desire to like let go of some of that idea of perfectionism and be a little bit more flexible. And I usually just check in with myself to sort of like assess like how's my energy, like how's my heart feel today, how's my soul feel today, and then I'll look at that list and say like what do I need off of this list. And it's almost like a choose your own adventure. Like you remember those books from when we were kids, like choose your own adventure, like what's my adventure today. So that's what I lean into. That's how I've developed a little bit more flexibility in those practices I choose, but I'm always looking to like be curious and explore and add things to that list or to that toolbox so that I have options and I can kind of just check in with myself and figure out what I need.
I've never thought about this before, so I'm doing this on the fly, but I want kind of your opinion on it. As someone that has always strived for perfectionism, right? It's like you have no choices. It's like there is one way to do it. It needs to be this way, and this is the best way, right? So has implementing choices, just choices into your life, just making choices, has that helped any with the perfectionism? Because I've never thought about it, but like it feels like it really would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just
It's
having.
really like me kind of, yeah, instead of latching on to that all or nothing mentality, I've I really have tried to like shift and latch on to the that quote, like be firm with your intention but flexible in form. My intention every single day is to figure out how to show up as the best version of myself and to live in alignment with like my personal core values. So that list really helps me to say like depending on how I'm feeling today, which of these things is going to get me to that.
And it's not always going to be journaling. It's not always going to be a workout.
Mhm.
It's not going to always be yoga, right? Like something. So I'm a functional aging specialist, right? And so something I do
Yep.
with my clients is I want them to tell me how they're feeling today mentally and physically, and then that's how we plan their program for the day, right? So like
Mhm.
if someone's
Mhm.
body is like way off physically, we might do a lot of physical work that day. But if someone's off mentally, well, then we're going to do a lot of mental work that day because, you know, you know, if you're not mentally ready, physical work becomes very, very hard and vice versa. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
when your body hurts, it's hard to think, and so I think that that's a really great thing that you did, especially when you talk about this idea of perfectionism and absolutes, is that like you gave yourself a choice and you go, what feels the best today? Like, what do I need to feel good today so I can be myself? Today it's journaling. Tomorrow it's yoga.
Mhm.
How do you,
Yep,
okay.
exactly.
Do you ask your clients to journal?
Um I ask my clients what has worked for them in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I would say is like if it's something they've never tried, especially if I've got especially if I've got like neurodivergent clients, for me what I've found in my own experience is that like I can ruminate with the best of them, which is a function of ADHD. And so like I'll spin that same thought. I'll turn it over 100,000 times in my head. I'll run a conversation 100 different ways before I have it. Like I'll work out a scenario and I'll catastrophize and I'll do, like I can go places in my very quick, busy mind. But for me, journaling, like something about the physical act of like writing the thoughts, getting them out of my head and onto the page stops the spiral for me a lot of the time. And so if someone's never tried it before, I will like challenge them and I'll say like there don't have to be any rules. There's no like we're not putting a script. You don't have to write a certain number of words or sentences or pages. If you want to write down the one sentence that you're ruminating on or this one thought that you're ruminating on, that counts as journaling. Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to do It doesn't have to be this big elaborate practice that you have to like allocate an hour to. And so I'll usually challenge people to just try it, especially if they have a spicy mind, and just let them like have the opportunity to get out and see how it feels. It works for some people, it doesn't work for everyone. So, like, if you have genuinely tried it and it doesn't work for you, that's cool. I don't usually like to like I think I like to give my clients the same options I give myself. Like, you have choices, make a list.
Well, let me ask you this: how often do you go back and read your journals? Do you ever go back and read it?
Um Sometimes, but actually not that often.
Yeah.
Um it depends. And I actually use this little guy has been the game changer for me. This is like
Would
my
it?
digital notebook.
Oh,
So I can have like 10 different journals in this one little device,
yeah.
which means that I can like kind of separate things, right? Like I have a journal for therapy where I'll like take notes during my session. And then if there's things that I'm like reflecting on or working through, it'll all be in that one place. Um, I also have like a journal for like affirmations and more like kind of positive statements. Like if that's the mindset that I'm in that morning, or if that's what I need, then I'll go to that journal. And that's one that I don't usually like look back on or read a lot. I'll just sort of go to whatever I want to put on the page that day. But I mean, sometimes in the case of like the therapy stuff, like I might go back and read some of that again, especially if something bubbles up again. The thing that we thought we figured out 3 months ago, and it just comes right on back like it never even happened. I need to revisit some of the things that I was thinking or trying or working through at that time. So it just depends on like what it is. But I love, maybe this is a little bit of my like OCD. I love having everything organized into different notebooks and folders so that I can categorize it. Who has
Well,
categorized journals? Just me.
look,
Just me.
I think we've established that perfectionism and OCD isn't a problem as long as it's not a problem for you or anybody else, right? So as long as it works in a positive way, it doesn't cause
Exactly.
you stress and like helps you organize, I think that's good. The reason I asked about the journaling
Yep.
thing, if you go back and read it, is because I think the big miss that sometimes people have about journaling is they're like, well, I don't want to write that and go read all that stuff over again. You're not writing it to read it over again. You're writing
Yeah.
it to get it out of your head. You're writing it to release, like you don't have to ever read those things like ever again. Like I encourage
Yeah.
my clients to journal like via like voice messages or texting, stuff
Yeah.
notes in their phone or just writing down thoughts. Like, I mean, I don't journal in a typical way. I journal on my phone. I just write thoughts and sentences and it just like it's all I mean, it just looks like crazy thoughts, you know what I mean? But for me,
Hmm.
I have to get them out so that like so they're not stuck. So because this is what happens with me. If I don't get my journaling thoughts out, then I start ruminating about trying to remember what they are and not forgetting them. Like, and then I just forget what I was thinking about, like trying to remember what, and if I write it, it's like, well, it's out of my head, you know what I mean? And then I can go back and read it and go, that was
Yep.
stupid, or that was really great, you know what I mean? And then I can sort through my thoughts
Yeah.
too. And I think that's just, it's just look, I don't know about you, but every time I bring up journaling to my clients, they're kind of like, ugh. And I'm just like, dude, come on. Like, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it
Hmm.
if it wouldn't be pot. Now, just like you said, try it. If it doesn't work, you don't like it, fine. But there are
Yeah.
a ton of positive benefits to it. I think, it's just always the one that people want to just, it's like when you tell people, you're like, oh my God, your skin looks so great. Like, what are you doing? You're like, I stopped drinking alcohol. And they're like, oh, what else do you do? You know what I mean? Like they don't want to do the one thing. They don't want to journal.
Give me
They just
another
like,
option. I don't like
yeah,
that one.
is there another option out there? You know what I mean? Um, are you a reader?
Yeah.
You're obviously a reader. You got tons of books. Do you have a book you would recommend for my unofficial book club that I kind of ask people about books?
Oh gosh. Wow.
You just
I've read
name
so
one.
many books. My favorite book of all time. Um, is Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Okay, I have not read that, but I'm gonna now put that on my list. Okay, so
Yeah.
really
It's
quickly, one sentence. Why should I read this book?
Well, if we're getting technical, it's aimed at women to sort of like empower them because women receive a lot of messaging and conditioning from a very young age to sort of like tame their wild, right? Like be quiet, take up less space, sit still, look pretty, like do all the things that you're supposed to do, check all the boxes, like
Right.
grow up, get a job, get married, be a wife, be a mom, all the things. And it's really just Glennon's, it's a series of like really short stories. It's not necessarily like one continuous book all the way through, that kind of illustrate all the ways in which we sort of like cage or tame ourselves. And we're partially responsible, a lot of us, because we go along with it. Um, but I think it is, honestly, I think it should be required reading for every woman. But I have actually shared it with a few of my friends, especially who have daughters, and they've found it unbelievably insightful in raising girls. And I know you have a girl, so
Yeah.
that's why you should
So
read it.
yeah, no, and now I mean, when you said it's a book that women should read, I was like, okay, well now I got to read it because I always go to my daughter first, and like it's funny what you say because I don't know if this makes me a good parent or a bad parent, but I raised my daughter as a child, as a human, and as a person. I don't raise her as a boy or a girl, right? Now she
Yeah.
likes to do typical girl stuff. You know what I mean? And she talks in typical girl ways and she likes typical girl things. But I try to tell her, like, hey, you're not limited to just that
Yep.
stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and it's so funny because my parents are so much older, and I am older. My daughter's younger, and so my dad is very old school. He's like, "Don't let her climb on that. She's gonna get dirty." And I'm like, "Dad, like, stop." You know what I mean? Like, because I want her to
Yeah.
feel like she can do anything she wants to do. I really truly want her to feel that way because that's when you feel the best. Every person feels the best when they feel
Yeah.
like they can do anything they want to do. And so, I really want her to have that. So yeah, 100%. I'm definitely
Yeah.
going to do that. Okay. One last thing before we get out of here, because I always like to ask people about this. Like, do you use like music at all? Like, are you to relax and stuff like that? Are you a music or movie person or anything?
I'm definitely a music person.
Oh, okay. Who do you who do you
I
who do
I
you
was
listen
like a
to? And
cheerleader and dancer most of my life, so I
okay.
really like I can't be anywhere where there's music playing and not dance. Like that could
Nice.
be the grocery store or like, like it could literally be anywhere. Like I move without realizing I'm moving. So I do connect deeply to music. Pretty eclectic though. And I think like while I'm working, I listen to a lot of like brown noise or like beats or like um, even like healing frequencies sometimes. But I genuinely just, I mean,
What's
90s
your
hits. That's
not
me.
you're in the 90s stuff?
Yeah, like 80s,
Like
90s hits.
like like Britney Spears? You a Britney Spears fan?
Mm, not so
No?
much the poppy stuff, more like the 90s hip hop and R&B.
Okay, so like I'm trying to think of like who's your favorite R&B? Like you have a favorite R&B person?
I don't know if I have like one favorite person, but
Mm.
I'll like my go-to on Spotify is just like play me the 90s hip hop and R&B, and it's whatever comes on that playlist is, I don't know,
Usually
I
in your
just like dancing.
it's usually in your wheelhouse. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I'm a big connoisseur of music, and I am firmly convinced that the best music was from like the 70s to the 90s, like right in that era is like where
Mhm.
music really took off and stuff like that. So like I love like 90s hip hop. I'm a big hip hop head. So and 90s R&B was next level. Like there hasn't been
Yeah,
R&B like in the 90s before or since. I mean, it was a great time for R&B in the 90s for sure. Yeah. Oh man. Well,
exactly. Exactly.
Erica, I appreciate it so much. I hope you had a great time. Did you have a good time?
I did. I had a great time.
Favorite podcast ever. Just kidding. Anyways, so hey, so thank you so much for doing this, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Scott.